My role as editor of the corporate fundraising book was first of all to have a look at what the main issues are affecting corporate fundraising these days, and also to seek out some of the best and most experienced corporate fundraisers to write the individual chapters in the book. Overall, the book gives you really good insight into all different aspects of corporate fundraising, but where I think people start off with is looking at the area of strategy. And by that I mean how they're going to plan what they're going to do in their corporate fundraising activity, particularly to look at how you can use your probably quite limited resources most effectively and most important to help you make the most money out of corporate fundraising. What's really interesting, I find, that when I talk to people in the corporate sector, they are surprised that some charities are still sending them cold letters that may be targeted by having a person's name put in or a separate paragraph, but basically they see them as a cold letter. And their view is that that really doesn't meet the way things work these days. Corporate fundraising is all about developing relationships. It's getting to know people and companies, getting to know their objectives, what makes them tick, and then discussing with them the ideas of how you can work in partnership. And sending a letter isn't a very good way of developing a relationship. So what you can do from this book is read one of the chapters about strategy, but also I'm sure you'll be pleased to know that there is actually a template strategy in the appendix which you can use as an outline structure for developing your own strategy. The second issue I'd like to look at is that of ethical issues. We see so much in the press about examples of where charities are unsure about whether they should work with certain corporate partners and whether there might be a reputation risk to that. And also it's very difficult for individual fundraisers to take their own personal views out of decision making. So it's really important that a charity has a proper structure to make decisions about which companies they will or possibly won't work with. So in addition to a chapter about some of the theory behind ethics, which is absolutely fascinating, again we have a framework in the appendix. So if you are about to write an ethical policy, then hopefully this will really help kind of hold your hand through that process. This is now the 4th edition of the corporate fundraising book. It was first published about 16 years ago, and what's really interesting is to see how corporate fundraising has developed over those years. Some of the basic principles are the same, but there are more and more examples now of different ways that charities are engaging with companies. So perhaps you're new to corporate fundraising, in which case this book will give you really good insight into all the different aspects that you need to know, from what the different types of mechanisms are that charities use to work with companies, to developing your new business strategy, to managing relationships, and also the inspiration from the case studies will be very useful to you. Perhaps you're a corporate fundraising manager and you might want to see whether there are aspects that other charities are doing that you can implement in your charity, and you might want to look at some of the more strategic issues. And if you're a senior manager or perhaps a chief executive, by reading this book it'll give you really good overall insight into corporate fundraising and how it can fit into the overall strategy of your charity. So I do hope you enjoyed reading this book, and most of all I do hope it makes you increasingly successful in developing your own corporate partnerships.